Hey guys, today we got a couple of videos for some builds, just for people who are quite new to the game or newer to Clown, who doesn't necessarily have all the kind of high price characters unlocked, such as the licensed characters and all of that. We're going for a bit more beginner builds, and we'll kind of go over as many as I can think of to allow for help for newer players. This will only include the first few killers that you do unlocked. So it will be these 6. I do know that Doctor and I think maybe Hag might be locked behind a DLC on PC, which I do apologize for. But I'm going over the console killers that haven't been locked behind a price cap, who console players will get for completely free. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get into the builds. Before we start, I will be at the end of the video adding a couple of add-on combos which will allow for new players to kind of learn Clown and kind of help out a little. And also I will warn you, these builds will vary between your MMR rating and the skill of the survivors you're up against. Some of them might not be as sweaty or anything and more kind of memey, but some of them will be able to handle kind of like mid to high range MMR perfectly fine. It's all based on the player that is playing these builds, so if you do not do the best with them, just keep trying with it, and ultimately you will learn how to use the build, and you will learn how to kind of get into an element with the build that you have chosen. I will be giving multiple builds here for you to pick from. Okay, so we have a kind of new player build who is completely new to the game. You just brought DBD, you saw Clown, you brought him, and you're like, hey, let's play him. You've got a couple of levels in him, but you don't really know what to do. So this build is completely for just saying you have Clown, and the only person you have leveled up is Clown. So we are using Jolt. Whenever you down someone with an M1, which Clown is an M1 killer, all gens within 32 meters, which is your terror radius, will lose 8% regression of their progress. And if someone's not repairing already, that will continuously regress. It's a very powerful perk on majority of M1 killers. This can be like any of the regression perks that we talk about can be replaced for other regression perks that you have a personal preference for if you have unlocked them, but I'm just going over personal preference at the moment and what I think is best and what I would use. So Jolt to kind of regress all gens within 32 meters. We have Pop Goes the Weasel, so if someone's on that gen and it's about to pop, after hooking someone for the next 45 seconds, if we kick a generator, it will lose 20% of its progress. This used to be completely meta. It's not too much meta nowadays, but it is still a very powerful regression perk, and it is one of the better perks. So if you're a new player with Clown, you unlock this. This used to be a Demogorgon perk, as it does say on the screen, Demogorgon. However, at the moment, it is a universal perk for everyone to unlock. This is one of Clown's free perks that he unlocks. Pop Goes the Weasel for 20% regression after hooking a survivor when kicking the next generator. We're using another Clown perk. This is Bamboozle. This can allow for a couple of window mine games alongside blocking windows that are quite problematic for you, and kind of going down that route just to help you learn chases and kind of allow you to punish a little on vaults. New players generally typically vault a lot more after the survivor, so we can use this to be able to block that vault so survivors can't really use it. It's probably one of Clown's better perks. Well, it's his second best perk, so that is up for grabs for you. And then we're using Sloppy Butcher, which is another universal perk. It allows you, when hitting someone with an M1, they will be inflicted with hemorrhage and mangled. So hemorrhage allows them to bleed more, so you can track their blood a lot easier. But also mangled allows it so anyone that is healing takes 25% longer to heal. So this is a little bit of slowdown for you, as you don't really have slowdown on the build. It's also for a little bit of tracking as well, and also you can punish the heals. If you get close and people interrupt heals, all that healing progress will disappear. It just allows for a new player experience ultimately. Okay, for our second build, we have a kind of gen kicking build. This is what you typically get to the closest to the current killer meta at the moment. This is using a couple of teachables from the base characters that you unlock. Doctor, one of Doctor's is in here, so PC players, you will have to get Doctor, but other than that, this is completely free for console players. So if you decided to level up the Trapper and get into Prestige 1, you will unlock Brutal Strength. Brutal Strength allows you to kick pallets, walls, and generators 20% quicker. This is just kind of allowing you to catch up a little quicker, get those pallets out the way, so you can catch up to the chase, get the pallets out the way, they don't become a threat anymore. And ultimately it kind of helps you with your time management, and the more pallets that you do kick and more pallets you get out of the way, the more strong your endgame will be, as survivors don't have as much looping capabilities. We have Jolt once again, which is a universal perk. All generators within 32 meters will lose their progress. If someone is still on said generator, after you do get a down, or there's a gen that isn't quite in the range, you can use Pop Goes the Weasel to regress that by 20%. Majority people will stay on like the very high progress gens and all of that, and if there's a gen near where you decide to hook, you can use Pop Goes the Weasel to regress that generator by 20% and continue the chase. Then when you do use Pop Goes the Weasel, or if you're in the middle of chase and someone's just got off a gen and you think it's plausible to use a kick and let them get a little bit distant so you can kick that gen and start regressing it, we have Overcharge. Overcharge is a very powerful perk, and in today's meta is used quite a bit. So when you first start kicking a gen, it will go at 75% increased speed of regression, and it will also give the survivor a difficult skill check when they do hop on the generator, but that's another kind of bonus, but we're mainly using it for the regression. It starts at 75% and over time will go up to 200% of the normal speed over 30 seconds. This allows you to be able to chase a survivor. If you pop it, that will be 20%, and then it will slowly regress more and more over time until it reaches 0, and especially if you're in a chase with a survivor and no one's getting back on that gen, that gen will continue regressing and it will hit 0 in no time. If there is someone that is around and is typically, you know, there's 2 people on a gen and you chase the one, if they get back on the gen and they're not necessarily confident with skill checks, they have to hit a very hard, or not very hard, but a decently hard skill check, and if they miss it, that gen will lose 15% of its progress instead of the original 10% for missing a skill check. This is the closest thing to the meta at the moment, and this will probably be the easier builder clown. Give you a lot more gen defense and a lot more pressure whilst playing the clown. Okay, next on our list, we are going for a bit of an anti-heal build. This is one of the more memey builds, but it kind of allows you to be able to put more pressure on the survivors from being injured than from kicking gens and all of that. It's also just kind of a fun build to run if you're kind of sick and tired of running gen perks, which I definitely am sometimes. So it's just more of a fun build and to prevent survivors from healing. It can be countered a little bit by a boon, but we do have some perks in place to counter boons, but also allow us to be able to kind of benefit a little more, and you can switch and change some perks. So we have the Nurse's Teachable, which is a free character. When a survivor is healing within 28 meters, we can see their aura through the wall. Now, if someone's running a anti-aura perk, such as Distortion, we can still see the person healing them. Unless they are self-caring, we can still see the other individual healing them, unless they have another aura disarming perk, anti-aura perk. We have Sloppy Butcher once again to inflict Mangled, which increases their healing speed by 25%. We are then using Distressing to increase our terror radius size by 26%. This is a universal perk, and so is Sloppy. And we also get more blood points in Deviousness, so it also allows you to get a little bit more blood points so you can level Clown up a little more, or some other killers you haven't necessarily leveled. And then we're combining Distressing with Chorophobia. Anyone inside our terror radius has a 50% penalty to healing regression. So combined, we have a 75% penalty to healing. So it takes them 75% slower to heal, which I believe is roughly 28 seconds to get a full healing instead of the original 16, which is very good. And also, whilst in that area radius, healing skill checks are 50% quicker. This can throw many players off guard, even at the higher MMR, so it allows for more pressure whilst healing. And if you are able to see them through the wall healing at the slower speed, you can interrupt it, which Sloppy Butcher will proc, and then the person that is being healed, their healing bar will disappear. If you want to chase the person that was doing the healing or anything, their healing bar will slowly regress, so it goes back to 0, and ultimately you're trying to keep them injured for as long as possible. It's a very kind of meme build, very fun build, but it's one of my favorites to run, and it is quite beginner friendly, especially at the kind of lower MMRs. But once again, MMR and matchmaking will depict how good and how bad these builds are, and especially with experience with Clown as well. Okay, so we have a aggressive clown build for more aggressive players. This doesn't necessarily revolve on gem regression too much, but it's more so a chase build, more aggressive in chase. So we are using the Clown's perk Bamboozle to increase our vault and speed by 15% and to be able to block windows like Shack. This will make survivors panic, which forces them to drop pallets. The more pallets they drop, the easier time you have on chases, and the more windows you can block, the easier time you will have in chases. We have Jolt just for a little bit of gem regression to keep us in the game for a little bit longer. This can allow us to be able to regress multiple gens on the map all over the place and allow us to be able to just regress generators, keep us in the game longer, allow us to put more pressure onto the survivors. It won't necessarily work all the time. You can, once again, swap it out for whatever you like if you have a better gem regression perk that you prefer, but I would probably say Jolt is the most beginner friendly for now for this build. Because you want to be aggressive, you don't really want to spend time kicking gens. But do kick gens if you feel the need to, and they're like 99 or something, and you need that little bit of regression on it. We have Enduring. If you're not really planning on respecting pallets, which you probably shouldn't be doing unless you know how to play around them with Clown. Enduring. When stunned by a pallet, the stun is reduced by 50%. It allows you to be able to just take the pallet to the face, and then you can combine that with Brutal. Kick that pallet 20% quicker, so you can take the pallet to the face, take a 50% less stun, and then kick the pallet 20% quicker to then get back in chase. This allows you to shred pallets pretty quickly, not necessarily be able to respect them, so you can just swing through them if needed. It's very nice. These two perks are the Trapper, the Hillbilly, and then we have a universal perk here and one of Clown's perks. So this is more for aggressive play style, once again using the base killers that you unlock in the game, but it's a very kind of fun play style, very rewarding, and you feel so much better if you're able to get 4K using this build, because it's just very aggressive and in your face, and you should be constantly doing something in the match. Okay, so this build is for some people that haven't necessarily I think PC players don't have Hag, so this is mainly for console players, but if you do have Hag unlocked, this is more of a Hex build and a Hex orientated build. So we're using Jolt once again. This will combine with Devour, especially on the M1 killer side. We can once again hit people within 32 meters, it loses 8% regression, or hit people and end gens within 32 meters will lose 8% of its progress. Very good perk. It is my favorite, but once again, you can trade this off for any other perk that you would like. Hex Thrill of the Hunt. This is mainly to replace like Undying, but then again, you can go with whatever you want. I would probably say Thrill of the Hunt for newer players. This is a universal perk, so every totem remaining on the map, you gain a token. Every token you have will increase the survivor's cleansing and blessing time by 10% for each token. This just allows for your hexes to stay up a lot longer and allow you to have more time to get to them and defend them if needed. Once again, remember with Clown, if someone is on your hex and you're able to get a bottle toss on them, it will completely interrupt that totem cleansing action and completely reset their bar. It can save your hexes every now and then. We are using Ruin. Ruin is a little bit of regression that also combines with Jolt. So when a survivor is not on a generator, that gen will start regressing automatically, so it saves you having to kick the generator. This hex is problematic, but if survivors want to just plow through gens, they can. But it's not necessarily a massive problem to survivors, but it is an issue if it's like solo queue, or they have to go and get an unhook because they have to use their gem progress. And then combining that with Jolt, any gem within 32 meters, once again, will lose 8% progress, so that's an additional 8% progress lost to the generator that is regressing with Ruin if survivors aren't on it. And then we have Devour Hope. When we hook a survivor, if we move 24 meters away, which allows survivors to get safe unhooks, we gain a token. Once we hit 3 tokens, we can then inst down all survivors on the map with 1 hit. This combines with Jolt as well, because you can add even more pressure to the generators by downing multiple survivors in the same area, regressing one specific gen multiple times. And then once you get to 5 stacks, you can then Mori people and kill them on the spot. It's completely your choice whether you want to, or you can hook them. Completely your choice, but this is mainly just to be able to defend our hex totems, get as many buffs and benefits from them as we can, and seeing ultimately what we can do with full hex perks. It is very problematic for survivors because it gives them a second objective to do, but also you have to defend hexes as well. So it is completely your choice whether you want to be defending the hex or hoping it's in a good spot or something along the lines of that. It all matters around your playstyle and how you want to manage and how your game is ultimately going. But I will say this is a very powerful perk, or powerful build, sorry. It's more passive, but quite aggressive at the same time. For our next build, we have a skill check build. So at the moment, we are using Fearmonger, which leaves survivors exhausted and blind whilst they are on generators. This just allows for a little bit more pressure around the map, because if we hook a survivor, if they want to greed the gen, they won't necessarily know where the survivor is until 5 seconds after getting off it. Or if they're continuously running away from you, they will be exhausted, which allows their dead hard or their sprint burst or something to render useless, or their life. This can be swapped for a regression perk of any choice. I'm not too fussed. Well, no, it depends on what you want to be running as a regression perk, but we do have a little bit of regression. You can combine this with like Call of Brian or something just to allow for a little bit more pressure. We are using Unnerving Presence, so survivors within our terror radius have 10% chance of hitting a great or triggering a skill check, and the skill check bar is reduced by 60% in size. This is Trapper's perk. It's kind of just more of a problematic perk, and if people aren't necessarily that great at hitting skill checks in your lobbies, then this perk will kind of render a toll on them. We are using Overcharge, so this allows for a skill check to appear upon kicking a generator when the survivors next get on it. If they miss that skill check, they lose 5% of progress, but it also allows you to have a little bit of regression on the kick of your generator, just so it will regress all the way back to full. And then we are using a Hex from the Huntress. Huntress Lullaby. Survivors receive 6% regression penalty when missing a skill check whilst healing or repairing. So instead of 10%, it will be a 16% regression on the skill check or on the gen if they miss a skill check. And I believe Overcharge stacks with this, so that will be even more. Do correct me if I am wrong with my numbers. Every time we hook a survivor, you will get a token. Survivors then have a delayed time between 1 to 4 tokens of when the skill check will appear. So usually you'll hear the skill check sound, get prepared, and then the skill check will pop up. This shortens that time, which can throw off many players and render this hex to be quite an issue. And once you hit 5 tokens, there will be no skill check sound at all, so people will be having to concentrate on that gen as much as they can to hit these skill checks because they don't know when it's coming. This can be combined with Fearmonger if they're on a generator, because if they need to hop off to do a different action and a skill check appears, they won't be able to hear it, and that gen will blow up the second they get off, regressing the gen quite a bit. This is more so just a horrible skill check build. It's very fun, very memey, but is a very quite decent build to run. So now we have more of a universal build that can be used on any killers, but it's more so just a universal build that works with every killer, well, primarily M1, but it also kind of allows for someone who doesn't necessarily have all the teachables unlocked, or maybe not even clown unlocked, to be able to just have a quite standard, quite solid build. So we are using Jolt once again. This is the only universal gem regression perk that we have, but is still very powerful on majority of the newer killers that you do unlock, as most of them are M1 killers. Sloppy Butcher, which allows survivors to have an increased healing time and heal a lot slower, drop more blood, and overall just have quite a harder time in healing. This is a little bit of slowdown because the longer they spend healing, the less time they are on gens. Spies from the Shadows. This is a little bit of an info perk. It allows any crow within 36 meters, once they take flight from a survivor being near them, you will get a notification that there is a survivor in that general direction. You can go over there, find the survivor, and punish them. This is a little bit of an info perk, and it's, to be fair, one of the better info perks for a lot more like stealthy survivors, but it's something you don't necessarily see a lot in killers, so many people won't necessarily expect. And then we have Shattered Hope. Now, this is a bit of a controversial perk. You can swap this for whatever you want, maybe Monster Shrine or something, but Shattered Hope, whenever a survivor places the boon totem, if you're able to find it and kick it, it will completely destroy that totem for the whole entire game, which means they have to find another spot to boon, which can render their time, because if they don't necessarily know the totem spawns, they're going to be searching and searching and searching, which is less time on a gen. And also we can see all survivors' auras within for 8 seconds if they are inside the boon range healing. So if you know there's some survivors healing, you can kick the boon, interrupt the heal, their regression bar goes down from sloppy, and you can see their aura, so you can go and punish them trying to heal. A majority of survivors will run Circle of Healing, and they'll very rarely run boons on their own that aren't Circle of Healing. So we're going to go into a little bit of add-on combinations, and then we'll call it there for the video. Okay, so for certain add-on combinations for quite new clown players, there is many we can go. We're going to go up the list for what I think is the best on each category. So ideally for a new clown player, you're going to be missing quite a lot of bottles. You're not really going to know what you're doing with them, so maybe a little bit of reload speed. This will allow you to reload quicker, to get back into the chase, to be able to kind of not necessarily worry about your mistakes too much. You can probably use a Robin Feather if you are throwing bottles at very close range, and then you can get that hit in to punish. If you are using the cork stopper as well, you can probably be using an extra bottle just in case. This allows for extra bottle management, and you can reload a lot quicker once being said again. If you are planning on using the yellow bottles, I'd probably take off the reload speed and put on the solvent jug. This allows you to be sped up from the yellow bottle for 1 second longer. If a survivor gets the speed buff and you get the speed buff, you will be faster than them for an additional 1 second, as this is not applied to the survivors. You can probably run sulfuric acid vial to swap for sloppy butcher. This just allows for healing speed to be lessened just a little bit. Once again, less time they are on generators, the more kind of slowdown you have, so it's a little bit slowdown. The Smelly Inner Souls, if you're reloading and you don't necessarily mind the natural reload speed, you can use this to kind of keep chase going and keep catching up, which increases your movement speed whilst reloading. I've used this. This is very powerful. Now we're going into more of the higher end add-ons. Before we do that, we can use chloroform. If you're not very good at hitting your bottles and you kind of hit them quite close to survivor but not quite enough, you can use the chloroform to slow them a little more. I wouldn't recommend using Hartshorn. In my opinion, it's not a very good add-on. It just allows the survivors to be able to get your yellow bottle a lot quicker. Okay, so the more high tier add-ons we have, Flask of Bleach. This allows you to slow them 4% more, allowing you to be able to catch up something chase a lot quicker. If they're trying to loop something and there's a bottle on it, that will be even more slow, so you can catch up even faster and hopefully get the hit. This is one of Clown's kind of newer player-friendly add-ons, which allows you to punish more once you have hit with the bottle and rewards you a lot more for hitting with a bottle. You can combine this with the E for 15, which allows you to slow them for 1 second longer. However, if you don't really find they're running out of the bottles and you're getting those hits a lot more, you can run double 2 extra bottles, which allows you to be able to kind of not necessarily be punished from missing a bottle, or allow you to be a little more aggressive with your bottles as you have some extra to use. You can also use the cigar box if you're learning to use yellow bottles. Yellow bottles are very awkward to be able to use when you first start learning Clown. So if you can see survivors' auras whilst you are invigorated by the yellow, you can kind of learn their pattern a little more whilst using Clown. This is probably one of the better beginner add-ons, especially if you're learning the second half of his power. And you can combine that with either the cheap gym bottle or the garnish makeup kit to allow you to move for 7 seconds instead of 5. Move with that haste speed 10% longer. I use a lot of these purple add-ons and a couple of green add-ons in a lot of my videos. And then we have the redhead pinky finger, but if you're learning Clown, I wouldn't recommend really running this unless you have a really tough time in one match and just want to have a bit more of a relaxing game. But if I was to give you 2 add-ons to run together, if you have quite the higher tier add-ons, it's the Flask of Bleach and Cheap Gym Bottle. If you don't have Cheap Gym Bottle, run Sticky Soda Bottle for the extra 1 bottle instead of 2. And then you can use kind of a mixture. The only one I really wouldn't say is the Spirit of Hartshorn and the kerosene can. Other than that, all the add-ons are perfectly fine. You'll probably have a bit of an issue running fingerless gloves just because it changes the bottle's whole entire like projectile and everything completely, and it can mess with your brain a little. Party bottles just for a little bit of blood points and a little bit of funny effects. But other than that, all of them kind of give you a little bit of a buff. The VHS pawn is also kind of a mindfuck, but it shouldn't really matter if you're not really swapping bottles too much. But those are the add-ons that I would recommend running if you are kind of learning clown. So once again, Flask of Bleach with an extra bottle is probably your best kind of new to clown. You can also run the Ether with Flask of Bleach as well, to be able to give you a little bit of a competitive advantage on the bottle toss. If you're starting to use yellow bottles a lot more, you can run Solvent Jug and Garnish Makeup Kit and Cigar Box. Those three allow you to assist the yellow bottle to prevent mistakes. You can also run some feathers if you're not necessarily good at knowing what the bottle arc is and you're throwing them a lot closer. This allows you to punish and get more hits in. Sulfuric acid vial for a little bit of slowdown in your games, and overall just play around with the add-ons, see what you enjoy using. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and hopefully this video was helpful to players that don't necessarily have all the perks unlocked and just have the base killers plus clown unlocked.